The White House on Monday announcing it will not send any U.S. government officials to the February Beijing Winter Olympic Games, condemning the country's mistreatment of Tibetans and the Muslim Uyghur population, as well as national security crackdowns in Hong Kong. But what about the corporations? Some top tier of the U.S. Olympic sponsors, including Coca-Cola, Visa, Airbnb. Can these multinationals stick with the event? Joining me now is House Foreign Affairs Committee and Judiciary Committee member Congressman Darrell Issa. Congressman, great to see you again. A diplomatic boycott. Frankly, I didn't really know what that was when I first heard about it a few months ago. I'm just wondering if that's enough in your mind.
Well, it's about half of what Jimmy Carter did. If that stands for anything in the way of diplomatic, I'm sure convinced that this will make a difference. Look, not since the 1970s have we looked so weak to the Russians and the Chinese. We are in a situation in which the Russians are on the Ukraine border, clearly in an antagonistic way. The Chinese are doing what they think they want to do, any way they want to do it. And the people who are going to be the adults in foreign policy are now doing one of the most childish things you can do, a quarter measure. Jimmy Carter did a half measure by having our Olympians not go, even after the international money, including U.S. money, was in the Olympics. In this case, we're doing half of that half.
And even though it appears we're getting handle on the pandemic, we still haven't gotten a clear, positive, open response to our requests from the Chinese about what happened in the Wuhan lab, about how the pandemic got out, about their own really inexcusable behavior at the beginning of this whole thing by closing down cities in China, but allowing individuals who are infected to go throughout the world. I mean, they have done so much. They bear so much responsibility for the millions of people killed around the world by this virus. Isn't that alone enough to boycott the Olympics full throttle?
Well, there's many reasons one might boycott the Olympics. I think the important thing, though, is that if you're going to do it, this is not a timely fashion and it's not going to make a difference. The fact is, you said it exactly right. Tomorrow, a new virus could come out of China and the exact same thing could happen and we'd have no warning. And by the way, as of tomorrow, 30 to 50,000 Marines, airmen, Army personnel are being involuntarily and less than honorably discharged if they weren't willing to get their first and second vaccines. Literally, we are at a time in which our military, demoralized from Ukraine, is now being demoralized by seeing many of their leadership, even 19-year veterans who are combat veterans who have had COVID, seeing them discharged. Well, by the way, the president has exempted the rest of the federal workforce for at least a year.
Yeah. Congressman, there's another thing, and it's something that you won't hear about in the mainstream media at all, is the fact that Hunter Biden is selling some of his shares of assets in a company, a financial company that a lot of people think is controlled by the government, the communist government of China. Jen Psaki and others in the White House won't talk about to whom he's selling it and for how much. Here's how she responds to questions like that in front of the media. Roll tape.
I was hoping you could commit to basic transparency about that transaction, including the name of the buyer, the dollar amount, and the timing. And the second question is, my colleague Miranda Devine has a new book out called The Laptop from Hell, and I was hoping that you could confirm that the laptop is indeed authentic and not Russian disinformation.
The president's son is not an employee of the federal government, so I'd point you to his representatives. And as it relates to the book, I have neither had the time nor interest in exploring or reading the book.
Congressman, after all the unresolved questions about Hunter Biden and whether or not Joe Biden himself got any of the money from these Chinese operations they were involved with, don't we deserve a better answer than that?
The American people deserve transparency, and in the case of anyone who can fly on Air Force One as a family member of a president or the vice president in case of Air Force Two, they should have to have their finances made as transparent as the president and vice president, as every member of Congress and the members of the cabinet. This loophole that has allowed Hunter Biden to make a lot of money, some of it perhaps eventually going to the president, is a loophole that has to be closed. And it's a loophole that should never have existed. No one should be able to trade on the president decades ago, and once again, Jimmy Carter, Billy's beer traded on reputation, but at least he was selling it to the public and it was laughable.
Right.
This, in fact, represents a threat to national security, and Hunter Biden should not be allowed on Air Force One or in the White House.
Particularly since we're trading, he's been trading with an enemy, it can be argued, of the United States at the moment. It's really extraordinary. Congressman Darrell Issa, thank you so much for being here. Good to see you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.